Her mind began to form a plan. She didn't need to react immediately, but she knew that when the right moment came, she would address the situation with the same calm power she carried onto the stage. The next sessions went well. She met with young leaders, answered questions, and encouraged them. They appreciated her honesty, her warmth, her willingness to share real stories. By evening, the conference was winding down for the day. Guests left the hall chatting excitedly about the sessions they had attended. The organizers looked satisfied. The atmosphere felt successful, but when she stepped into the hallway outside the main hall, she heard something she wasn't meant to hear. A group of hotel employees were standing near a cart. Talking casually, one said, "Can you believe she was the speaker? The one we stopped yesterday?" Another replied, "I really thought she was some assistant or something. Didn't seem like anyone important." A third added, "Well, she sure proved us wrong." They laughed softly, not in a cruel way, but in a careless way. She didn't confront them. She didn't speak at all. She just walked past quietly, letting their words settle into the air. But inside her mind, something clicked into place. She now, on the meeting request, came after the conference ended. She made it in a calm but firm tone. She did not raise her voice or show anger, but anyone watching her could feel that she meant every word. The hotel manager agreed right away, not knowing what had happened earlier, but sensing something serious in her expression. He asked her to wait for a few minutes while he prepared a private space. She simply nodded and stood to the side, holding her small notebook the same way she held it earlier when the staff tried to stop her. She looked peaceful, but inside she felt a quiet determination. She wanted to speak the truth without letting emotions lead her. She wanted them to understand what dignity meant. When she walked into the meeting room, it was just the manager at first. He smiled politely, trying to establish a friendly tone. She returned a polite smile, but did not let it distract her from the purpose of the conversation. Within moments, 2 more senior staff members arrived, followed by one of the employees she had seen whispering at the front desk. They avoided eye contact. She noticed, but said nothing yet. The manager began the meeting with a warm welcome and asked how he could assist her. She did not waste any time. She calmly opened her notebook and started describing the entire situation from the moment she entered the hotel. She explained how she felt unwelcome even before she reached the check-in counter. She described the tone of voice used by the staff, the way they looked at her, and the way they laughed among themselves while talking about her as though she could not hear. Her voice remained steady throughout. She did not add dramatic emotion or exaggeration. Every detail she shared was simple, honest, and very human. The manager listened with a serious expression. The more she spoke, the more the room grew still. Even the staff standing in the back shifted uncomfortably. Looking at the floor, she talked about being stopped from entering the VIP lounge, even though her name was on the list. She explained how they spoke loudly, drawing attention to her, making it seem like she was trying to sneak into a place she did not belong. She mentioned how other guests watched, some confused, some embarrassed on her behalf. She told them how she felt. Not angry, not shocked. Just disappointed. The manager finally asked if there were any witnesses. Before she could answer, 2 guests who had attended the conference stepped into the room. They had followed her quietly, knowing what happened, and wanting to support her without being asked. They described what they saw at the entrance of the lounge. They confirmed how the staff had acted. They described how uncomfortable it made them feel and how unprofessional it looked to everyone nearby, as the truth became undeniable. The manager's expression changed. At first, he had hoped it was a misunderstanding, but now he saw the reality. He turned to his staff and asked them to speak. The room stayed silent for a long moment. Finally, one of the employees stepped forward. Their voice shook slightly as they admitted they had made assumptions. They did not try to excuse it. They simply apologized. Others followed, each looking more uncomfortable than the last. The CEO listened without interrupting. She appreciated honesty, even when it came late. She told them she did not want anyone punished on her behalf. She simply wanted the hotel to reflect on what happened. She wanted them to understand how easily dignity could be taken away, even without loud insults or direct harm. She wanted them to understand that assumptions could push someone into humiliation without anyone realizing the weight of their actions. The manager apologized sincerely. He promised to take this seriously. He spoke about holding staff training sessions and reviewing how guests were treated, especially those who did not fit the picture of what they expected a VIP guest to look like. He sounded genuine, but she had heard such promises before in many places. She nodded politely, but inside she knew words were not enough. After addressing everything, she closed her notebook softly and thanked everyone for listening. Her tone stayed warm, but it carried strength. She was not asking for respect. She was expecting it. She stood up, preparing to leave the room. And they all stood as well, almost instinctively, as though they felt the weight of her presence before she walked out. The manager asked if there was anything the hotel could do to make things right. She paused for a moment, then turned to him. She said she didn't want special treatment or offers. All she wanted was assurance that no other guest would feel the way she did that morning. The manager promised again, a little more softly this time, as though he finally understood the depth of her words. She left the meeting room with the same quiet confidence she entered with. But as she walked through the hallway, she noticed how differently the staff looked at her now. Not with fear, but with respect. With awareness. They saw her not as someone they judged earlier, but as someone who carried herself with dignity and clarity, even though the conversation ended. She knew the story was not over. What came next would decide how the hotel handled its responsibility. And she already knew she would have to take one more step that would show them what accountability meant. She headed back toward the conference area, moving with the same calm presence she carried all day. There were people waiting to speak with her, guests who had seen what happened and wanted to offer their support. She thanked them all, appreciating their kindness, but she did not linger long. Her mind was already on the next decision she had to make. The event was important, and many executives had traveled to attend. She needed to make sure they were treated with respect, not just because of her influence, but because every person deserved a fair and welcoming environment. After everything that happened, she did not feel comfortable letting the rest of the event continue in the same hotel. Her decision came naturally. It was not emotional. It was not an act of revenge. It was simply the right thing to do. And when she acted on that decision, the hotel would feel the impact not through anger, through the quiet power of accountability. She walked away from the hallway with a sense of clarity. There was still one more action to take before the day ended, and it would change everything for the hotel for the rest of the conference. Part 5 would show exactly how she chose to handle it, and why the entire hotel staff would never forget what happened that day. The decision settled in her mind. Long before she returned to her hotel room, she felt calm, even lighter, as though the heavy weight of the day had finally found a clear direction. She sat down on the small sofa near the window, took a slow breath, and pulled out her phone. Her actions were steady and thoughtful, not rushed or emotional. She opened the contact list and began calling the conference organizers one by one. Each call began the same way. She spoke in a gentle tone, without raising her voice or showing frustration. She simply explained what happened and why she believed the conference needed to move to a different hotel. Her words were simple, but her message was strong. The people on the other end of the call listened carefully. Many of them had already heard whispers of the incident. Some had even witnessed parts of it. One organizer paused for a long moment after hearing her explanation. Then he said he understood and fully supported her decision. Others responded the same way. Not a single person questioned her or suggested she should let it go. They trusted her judgment, and they knew she would not make such a decision lightly. By the time her final call was done, the plan was already set in motion. The partner hotel nearby had enough space, and they were ready to welcome the entire group on short notice. They assured her they would handle everything with care. It felt like a wave of relief washing over her. The next step was to inform the attendees. She worked with the organizers to send out an official message. The tone of the message was firm but respectful. It did not point fingers or attack anyone. Instead, it explained that the conference would continue at a new location and provided clear instructions for the move. Within minutes, the responses started coming in. Many guests expressed support. Some said they admired her for taking a stand without creating unnecessary conflict. She arrived just after sunrise, when the hotel lobby was still quiet and the air outside felt cool. She had taken a red-eye flight, the kind that leaves a person tired but determined to push through because the day ahead matters too much to slow down. Her suitcase rolled behind her with a soft sound. She moved with a calm confidence. Though she wasn't dressed like someone the hotel staff expected for a major business event. She wore simple black pants, comfortable shoes, and a plain jacket. Nothing flashy. Nothing that shouted her status, and that was the first thing people noticed, not her presence. It's not her steady nature, but her clothes. She didn't mind. She never had. She built her success on actions. Not the looks people expected from a CEO, but she could already feel the eyes on her. She stepped inside. The hotel was large and polished. With tall marble columns and glowing lights, guests moved through the space with their bags and morning coffees. A few business people were already in the lounge checking emails. Everyone seemed busy, but even in the middle of that movement, it was easy to notice the small things. Like the way the front desk employees looked at her as she walked up, she gave them a friendly nod, hoping for a warm greeting. Instead, the young man behind the counter glanced at her outfit, then at her simple overnight bag and gave a tight smile. Not rude, not kind either. More like a smile someone forces when they don't think the person in front of them matters. "Good morning," she said softly. The young man did not respond right away. He looked over her shoulder as if waiting for someone more important, someone who fit the image he had in his mind. Finally, he cleared his throat and said, "Yes, can I help you?" "I have a reservation," she replied. "And I'm also checking in for the conference." He gave a small nod but didn't look at the computer yet. "Which conference?" She told him the name of the event, the one she had been invited to give the opening talk for. He typed slowly, making small sighs, as if she was taking up too much time. "In your name?" he asked. She told him. He stopped typing for a moment, but not because he recognized her. It was because his computer froze. He tapped the keyboard, then sighed again. "The system is always acting up," he muttered loudly. She waited patiently. She always tried to give people space to do their work, even when they treated her with less respect than they should. She believed everyone had their own problems, their own pressures. While he worked, another staff member, a woman with a crisp uniform and a sharp tone, came over. She looked at the CEO with the same misjudging glance. Then she whispered something to her coworker. They both smiled, a little, one of those smiles that people share. They think they're making fun of someone privately. The CEO noticed. She always noticed details, especially when they were connected to how she was being treated. But she stayed calm. She didn't react. "Okay," the young man finally said. "I found your reservation." He handed her a room key, still avoiding eye contact. "You're on the 3rd floor. Breakfast ends at 9. Elevator is on your right." That was it. No welcome. No offer to help with her bag. No acknowledgement that she was a VIP guest. Nothing. She took the key and thanked him anyway. She believed in staying polite even when others didn't deserve it. As she walked toward the elevators, she heard the 2 staff members whisper again. But she didn't turn around. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. She stepped inside and took a deep breath. Normally, she tried not to judge people too quickly. She liked giving everyone the benefit of the doubt. But she had been in enough hotels, enough meetings, enough environments where she had to prove herself again and again. Just because she didn't look like what people expected a CEO to look like, the elevator rose slowly. When the doors opened, she stepped into a quiet hallway. Her room was at the end, with a large window showing a soft blue morning sky. She set her suitcase down, stretched her back, and let out a long breath. She checked her schedule. The conference rehearsal was in 2 hours. She had time to freshen up, review her speech notes, prepare. But before she even began organizing her things, her phone buzzed. It was a message from the conference coordinator asking if she had arrived safely. And if she needed anything, she replied quickly, "Yes, I'm here. Everything's fine." It was fine for now. But she had already felt something in the lobby, on energy, a tone. A careless attitude that made her wonder how the rest of the hotel staff would treat her throughout the day. She took a shower, changed into fresh clothes, and tied her hair back neatly. She looked professional now, though still not flashy. She preferred comfort mixed with confidence. As she made her way back down to the conference area, the lobby had grown busier. More guests arrived. More staff hurried around. A group of employees stood near the entrance, chatting and laughing. When she walked past them, one of them gave her the same indifferent look the front desk staff had. She kept walking. When she reached the conference hall, she found a small team setting up banners and arranging chairs. A young coordinator saw her, recognized her immediately, and hurried over with a big smile. "You made it. We're so happy you're here," the coordinator said. The warmth in her voice felt like fresh air. The CEO smiled back, feeling a little more at ease. "We've set up a quiet space for rehearsals." The coordinator continued. "Let me show you." They walked down a bright hallway lined with photos from previous events. The space felt organized, lively, and ready. The coordinator explained that several business leaders were already checking in, and that the opening ceremony would begin early the next morning. When they reached the rehearsal room, the CEO stepped inside and saw a few people reviewing the agenda. They greeted her respectfully, welcoming her with sincere smiles. For a moment, she felt grounded again. Here, among people who knew her role and valued her work, she felt the respect she had earned. But as she stepped back out to grab a bottle of water, she overheard two hotel employees near the doorway. "Hey, did you see her earlier?" One whispered. "Yeah," the other replied. "I thought she was lost or something. Didn't look like anyone important. Guess she's with the conference," the first said with a small snicker. The CEO paused, then walked past them quietly. She didn't want to create tension or draw attention, but the words stuck with her. It wasn't the first time people made assumptions about her. It wouldn't be the last. But she had learned over the years how to pick her battles wisely. Sometimes silence was stronger. Sometimes action spoke louder. She returned to the rehearsal room, rehearsed her speech, and discussed final details with the event team. Everything seemed to be going well. Later, when she returned to the lobby to grab lunch, the same woman from the front desk spotted her. The woman looked surprised now that she was dressed more formally, but the shift in expression didn't erase the way she had behaved earlier. "Ma'am, do you need help with something?" the woman asked, suddenly polite. "No, thank you," the CEO replied. "I'm all set." But the woman kept talking. "Are you part of the conference?" "We've had a lot of people coming in." The CEO simply nodded. "Yes, I am." The woman smiled awkwardly, trying to guess her importance. "Is it your first time attending something like this?" The CEO almost laughed, but she didn't. Instead, she answered gently. "I've attended many." She walked away before the woman could ask more. In the dining area, she sat by the window with a salad and warm bread. As she ate, she thought about the conference, the speech she had spent weeks preparing, and the team waiting to hear her insights. She also thought about the small moments of disrespect she had already experienced here. She didn't let them sour her mood. She was used to rising above these things. She had built her career on staying steady even when others tried to shake her. After lunch, she stepped outside for fresh air. The sun had risen high, and the city streets were full of life. Cars passed, people hurried down sidewalks, and vendors sold warm food from small carts. She took a slow walk around the block to clear her mind. When she returned to the hotel, a large group of guests was checking in. Two staff members were struggling to manage them. The CEO waited patiently behind the crowd. Watching quietly as the line grew, a man in a suit pushed past her, almost bumping into her shoulder. "Excuse me," he said sharply, not really meaning it. She stepped aside. "It's all right," but a hotel staff member nearby saw the whole thing and frowned not at the man. "But at her, ma'am," he said. "Please don't block the path for other guests." She blinked. "I wasn't blocking anything." He gave her a dismissive look. "Just try to be mindful, all right?" She breathed in slowly. "Of course," she replied calmly. He walked away without another word. The CEO watched him go, then looked around the busy lobby. It was becoming clearer with every passing hour. Something about her appearance made. These staff members assumed she was less important, less capable, less deserving of respect. She wasn't angry. Not yet. She had learned long ago that anger wasted too much energy. What she felt was something quieter, something more steady, a determination to stay in control of her own tone, her own dignity. Still, she knew that these moments mattered. They had a way of building up. As she headed back to her room to rest, she looked at the elegant building around her, tall columns, the bright floors, the decorations that made the hotel seem so professional. But behind all of that beauty were people who could not see past their own assumptions. She closed her door gently behind her and sat on the edge of the bed. The conference would start soon. She needed to be fully present, fully grounded. She took a long breath, reminding herself of the truth she had always lived by. People's assumptions could never change her worth. But what she didn't know yet, what she couldn't see coming, was that the small moments she had experienced this morning were only the beginning. The disrespect would soon grow. The assumptions would soon turn into a public attempt to embarrass her. And when they tried, they would. The next morning began with the same soft light spreading across the sky, but the mood in the hotel was different. The lobby buzzed with activity as conference guests wandered through with briefcases, badges, and early morning coffee cups. The energy felt bright and lively, but beneath that, she noticed small looks from certain staff. Members' quick glances that judged before understanding. She came downstairs dressed in neat professional clothing. Still simple, still her own style, but enough to show she was prepared for the day. She carried her laptop in one hand and her notes in the other. She planned to have breakfast before heading to the conference hall for final preparations. When she approached the dining area, the host looked at her with uncertainty. "Are you here for the breakfast buffet?" the host asked, sounding unsure. "Yes," she answered with a gentle smile. The host hesitated. Breakfast is for guests only. Not everyone can enter this area." She raised her eyebrows slightly. "I am a guest. I checked in yesterday." The host blinked, surprised, as if he didn't expect that answer. "Oh, all right then. Your room number," she told him, and he finally moved aside, letting her in. Behind her, another guest walked in without being asked anything at all. She noticed that too. Inside, she chose a small table by the window. The morning sun warmed her face as she picked up a plate of fruit and toast. She tried to focus on her notes, but she could still feel the host glancing her way every few minutes. It wasn't hostile, just uncomfortable, like he wasn't used to someone like her being part of a business crowd once she finished eating. She collected her things and headed toward the conference level. The long hallway leading there was filled with workers carrying equipment, adjusting banners, and placing signs. The air hummed with preparation. She felt ready, but the moment she reached the VIP section of the conference area, she was met by two hotel employees standing near the entrance. They wore official badges and stiff expressions. "Excuse me, ma'am," one said, holding up a hand. "This area is restricted." She nodded politely. "I know. I'm part of the conference team." They exchanged a quick look. "Could you step aside for a moment?" the second one asked, his tone firm. She stepped back without complaint, though she could feel eyes on her again. Other conference guests walked through without being stopped. A few even greeted the employees casually. No one questioned them, but she was still standing there. After a moment, she asked calmly, "Is something wrong?" "We need to confirm your clearance," the first employee said. "This area is for VIPs and keynote speakers only." She looked at him, staying calm. "Yes, I know." But he didn't understand what she meant. Not yet. She pulled out her conference badge, showing her name and title clearly printed on it. The employee glanced at it, then at her, as if trying to decide whether it was real. "Where did you get this badge?" he asked slowly. "I received it from the coordinator yesterday," she replied. He didn't look convinced. "Just wait here. I'll check with someone." She breathed in, then let it out in a quiet sigh. She watched him walk away. The second employee stayed behind, arms crossed, standing like a guard next to a door. She had every right to enter as she waited. A few people passed by. Some offered polite nods. Others didn't notice her at all, but she could feel the second employee's discomfort, as if he believed she didn't belong there. Finally, the first employee returned with the coordinator beside him. The coordinator's face changed instantly when she saw the CEO. "There you are," the coordinator said warmly. "We've been waiting for you." The employee snapped to attention, realizing they had made a mistake. The coordinator continued, "She's leading the opening session. Please allow her through any time." The employees stumbled over their words. "Of course, we didn't know." "It's fine," the CEO said softly. She didn't want to make the moment worse. She brushed past them with quiet grace. Even though their assumptions had already settled deeply into her mind, once inside, she took a moment to breathe again. She didn't want frustration to cloud her focus. She had worked too hard to let small judgments throw her off. She walked toward the stage area, where workers were adjusting lights and testing microphones. The coordinator came over again. "I'm sorry about that," she said. "They should have checked the list." The CEO smiled gently. "It happens." But the coordinator looked troubled. Still, it shouldn't. The CEO appreciated the honesty. It made her feel seen. They went over the final layout of the hall. Rows of chairs pointed toward the stage. The large presentation screen displayed her opening slide. Everything looked professional and organized. When the technical rehearsal began, she stood on the stage and spoke into the microphone, testing her voice across the room. She talked through her introduction, making sure the sound was clear. The technicians adjusted the volume. She checked her slides one last time, but even as she worked, small things kept happening. One hotel staff member walked across the stage to move a stand. Brushing past her without saying, "Excuse me," another carried some equipment and set it down loudly. Right next to her rehearsal area, a third whispered to a coworker while pointing at her. Though he tried to hide it, none of it was aggressive, but it was constant. A steady stream of subtle disrespect, like she was invisible or unimportant. She kept her voice steady as she rehearsed. But inside, she felt each moment adding to the next. After rehearsal, she stepped aside to make a phone call. She spoke softly, checking in with her assistant about the afternoon schedule. While she talked, she noticed two hotel employees lingering nearby. One of them muttered she must be someone's helper, probably organizing notes or something. The other nodded. "Yeah, looks like it." Again, they had no idea who she was. No idea that she wasn't someone's assistant. She wasn't behind the scenes. She was in front. She ended her call and walked back to the main area. The employees avoided her gaze now. The assumptions had already been spoken aloud. She returned to her room for a moment to regroup. She sat on the bed, thinking about the pattern she had seen since she arrived. Every moment connected. Every assumption felt familiar. But she reminded herself of her focus. She wasn't here for their approval. She was here to share her knowledge, to lead, to inspire the people attending the conference. And she would do that with the same calm strength she always carried. Later that afternoon, when she walked through the lobby again, she saw the same woman from the front desk. The woman stared for a second, her eyes widening slightly when she noticed the official badge now hanging around the CEO's neck. "Oh, you're with the conference," the woman said carefully. "Yes," the CEO replied. The woman's tone changed quickly, her voice softer now. "If you need help with anything, please let us know." "Thank you," the CEO responded. She kept walking, but she knew the shift wasn't respect, it was reaction. In the late afternoon, she joined the other speakers for a meet-and-greet session. People welcomed her warmly, asking about her journey, her business, her upcoming session. She enjoyed these conversations. They felt real. They made her forget, at least for a little while, how the hotel staff had treated her. But while the session continued, a hotel worker came over and whispered something to another guest while pointing at her. She couldn't hear the words, but she recognized the expression, curious, confused, doubting, even in a room full of professionals. Someone always assumed she wasn't important. Still, she didn't say anything. She kept her smile steady and her tone warm as she chatted with guests. But the final incident of the day was impossible to ignore. When the session ended and the guests began leaving, she walked toward the elevator. A group of hotel employees blocked the hallway, wheeling a cart loaded with equipment. As she approached, they didn't move. She waited a moment, expecting them to make space. They didn't. Finally, she said gently, "Excuse me? May I pass?" One of them looked at her and said, "We're working. You'll have to wait." She glanced at the wide hallway. There was plenty of space for them to move the cart to the side. Still, she waited. She didn't want conflict. When they finally pulled the cart a few inches aside, she walked through, keeping her posture calm as she passed. One of them murmured under his breath, "People just walk around like they own the place." The words stung not because they were harsh, but because they were careless. Careless words always revealed hidden assumptions. She stepped into the elevator alone now. The doors closed slowly. Inside, she let herself breathe deeply. She had spent her whole life facing moments like these. But today felt different because today, she wasn't just a guest passing through. She was a leader stepping into one of the most important events of the year, and the hotel staff had no idea how much their actions were building toward. Something bigger. They thought they were judging a stranger. They didn't know she held power they couldn't imagine. They didn't know she had influence over the very event filling their hotel. They didn't know she had the strength to stay calm, but also the strength to stand up when the moment came, and they had no idea how close that moment was. She walked to her room, placed her notes on the desk, and looked at her reflection in the mirror. She looked steady. She looked ready. She looked like someone who had learned long ago when to stay quiet and when to rise. And this time, she knew she would not stay quiet for long, because tomorrow, everything would change. And the hotel would learn exactly who they had underestimated. The morning of the conference arrived with a sense of excitement filling the hotel halls. People moved with purpose, dressed in fresh suits and carrying folders, tablets, and coffee cups. The energy was sharper than the previous day, as if everyone understood the importance of the event ahead. For her, it was another chance to share her journey, to offer something useful, and to stand in her truth. She woke early, reviewed her notes one last time, took a moment to breathe deeply before stepping out of her room. The hallway was quiet. She walked calmly, her steps steady, her expression focused. She didn't carry much with her, just her laptop and the small card with the key points of her talk. She preferred keeping things simple. As she reached the elevator, she pressed the button and waited. When the doors opened, a group of hotel staff stood inside, talking quietly among themselves. They looked up, paused, and then stepped slightly aside, but not enough to make space comfortably. She entered anyway, offering a polite nod. One of them glanced at her badge, then at her face, confused. Another whispered something under his breath, though she couldn't catch it clearly. It didn't matter. She stood still, centered in her thoughts. The elevator reached the lobby, and as she stepped out, she saw a crowd gathered near the entrance of the conference hall. Some people recognized her from earlier meetings and waved. The warm gestures reminded her that she was here for a meaningful purpose. She headed toward the reception table where conference badges were being checked. A hotel employee stood there along with the conference team. As she approached, the employee looked at her sharply. "Ma'am, this area is for speakers and organizers only," he said. She raised her badge slightly. "And I'm one of them." He stared at the badge, squinting. "Are you sure this is the right badge?" Before she could respond, one of the conference volunteers hurried forward. "She's our keynote speaker. Please, let her through." "Oh," the employee said quickly, stepping aside. "Of course. My apologies." But the words didn't sound genuine. They sounded rushed, like he wanted to move on from the awkwardness. She thanked the volunteer and walked into the hall. The interior was bright and welcoming. Rows of chairs stretched across the room, filled with people settling in. The stage lights glowed softly, giving the place a sense of importance. She felt a familiar blend of nerves and excitement, something she had experienced many times before speaking at events. A member of the organizing team approached with a friendly smile. "Everything is ready. You'll be going on in about 15 minutes. Just take your place near the front." She nodded gratefully and walked toward the reserved seating near the stage. As she passed by, a few guests whispered quietly among themselves, but their whispers felt different from the hotel staff's. These held admiration, curiosity, respect. Still, a small moment happened that reminded her of the theme running through her visit. She sat down, placing her laptop bag gently under her chair. A hotel staff member came over, carrying a stack of booklets. He paused when he reached her row. "I'm sorry. This section is only for the main speakers," he said quickly. She looked at him with calm eyes. "I know, I'm one of them." He blinked. "Oh, really?" Before she replied, another attendee leaned in and said kindly, "Yes, she is. She's the opening speaker." The staff member flushed and offered her a tight, embarrassed smile. "My mistake," she answered gently. "It's okay." But inside, she felt the pattern repeating again, people assuming, judging, failing to see beyond their own expectations. The room quieted as the conference began. A warm voice from backstage welcomed everyone and invited them to take their seats. People settled in, adjusting their notepads and devices. The host stepped on stage, smiling broadly. "Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us at this year's leadership conference. We're honored to begin this event with someone whose journey has inspired many across the world." As she listened, she felt her heart settle. This was her space. This was where she belonged, the host continued. She has built one of the fastest-growing companies in her field and has guided hundreds of young leaders. Please welcome our keynote speaker. The audience applauded warmly. She stood up and walked toward the stage with steady steps. The lights shone softly across her face. She felt the weight of the moment, the responsibility, the history of every step she had taken to reach this point. As she walked, she noticed something out of the corner of her eye: two hotel employees standing near the back door. Their expressions froze. Their mouths parted slightly in shock. They whispered to each other, clearly recognizing her now. It was the same pair who had blocked her from entering the VIP area the day before. She didn't look their way again. She stayed focused on the stage. When she stepped in front of the microphone, the applause faded into a respectful silence. She took a breath and began speaking. Her voice flowed naturally. She talked about resilience, leadership, the importance of representation, and how every person has the power to rise above assumption and doubt. Her words came from the heart, shaped by years of experience. She didn't try to sound perfect. She tried to sound real. As she spoke, she saw heads nodding. She saw people leaning forward, listening deeply. She saw the energy of understanding move through the room. But she also saw the two hotel employees standing in the back, still watching her with wide eyes. Their expression wasn't negative. No, it was surprise mixed with something like guilt. For a moment, she felt that the day already had taught them something important. When her speech came to an end, the applause was strong and genuine. People rose from their seats, clapping, smiling, and showing their appreciation. She smiled softly and bowed her head in thanks. After the session, the organizers invited her to the side room for photos and short interviews with guests. The hallway leading there was busy with movement. As she stepped into the crowd, people approached her. "Your speech was incredible. I needed those words today. You inspired me so much." Received their words with grace, thanking each person who stopped her. But among the faces, she noticed one of the hotel employees from earlier standing nearby. He looked hesitant, like he wanted to speak but wasn't sure how. Finally, he stepped forward. I just wanted to say," he began fumbling with his words. "I didn't realize who you were. I didn't mean to make things difficult yesterday." She looked at him with steady eyes. "It's all right," she said calmly. "It's not about who I am. It's about how we treat people before we know their story." He nodded slowly, absorbing her words. She didn't need him to apologize. What mattered was the reflection. A few minutes later, she walked into the photo room. The atmosphere was warm, filled with gratitude and joy. Cameras clicked softly as she stood with organizers and guests. Back in the main hall, the event continued with panels and workshops. She mingled with attendees, shook hands, exchanged ideas. She loved being in these spaces, rooms filled with ambition, curiosity, and hope. But even as she moved through the busy hall, she could feel some of the hotel staff watching her. Their expressions had changed completely. No more doubt. No more hesitation. Only a quiet realization of how wrong their assumptions had been. Later that afternoon, she decided to take a quick break before her meeting with a group of young leaders. She walked toward the lounge, hoping to sit for a moment. When she arrived, however, she found another small scene waiting for her. A hotel worker stood at the lounge entrance checking badges. When she approached, he looked at her quickly. "This area is for VIP guests only," he said. "I know," she replied simply. "Then I'll need to see your badge." She handed it over without argument. He stared at it, his eyes widening. "Oh, I'm so sorry. You don't need to show this? Please come in." She didn't respond with annoyance or irritation. She simply walked inside, placed her things on a table near the window, and sat calmly. But a part of her knew something deep inside the morning's reveal wasn't enough. The truth of her identity had only reached the employees present during her speech. Others still didn't understand. Others still saw her through a lens shaped by assumptions. She had faced this pattern many times in her life. It always went the same way. At first, people dismissed her. Then, when they learned who she was, they shifted quickly to respect. But respect born from status wasn't the same as respect born from humanity. She wanted the second kind, as she sat in the lounge. Sipping a warm drink, she reflected on the past day. The comments, the restrictions, the looks. They had built up slowly, each one small on its own but significant together. She had remained patient. She had stayed composed. But she felt a quiet strength rising inside her. Not anger, not bitterness, just clarity. She would not allow people to treat her, anyone, like they didn't belong. A few people who had seen the way she was treated told her they were glad someone finally spoke up. She did not respond to every message, but she read each one with a warm heart. Meanwhile, downstairs, the hotel employees began noticing that groups of people were gathering in the lobby with their luggage. The staff exchanged confused looks. They whispered among themselves, trying to figure out what was going on. No one had told them anything yet, and the sudden movement of guests made the atmosphere tense. Soon after, the hotel manager rushed to the lobby. He looked around, puzzled and concerned. He approached a group of conference attendees and asked if everything was all right. They explained politely that the event was being moved to another hotel. The manager's face changed immediately. He hurried to the elevator, heading upstairs to find her. She was still in her room, gathering her things slowly and neatly, when she heard a knock at the door. She opened it, and the manager was standing there with an anxious look. He tried to remain professional, but the tension in his voice was hard to hide. He asked if it was true that the entire conference was leaving. She nodded calmly. He began apologizing again, even more sincerely than before, but she gently raised her hand, signaling him to stop. She told him she appreciated the apology, but the decision had already been made. She explained that it had nothing to do with anger or revenge. It was simply a matter of trust. She no longer felt comfortable hosting the rest of the event in a place where she had experienced disrespect. She wanted everyone in her group to feel safe, welcomed, and valued. The manager listened silently. His shoulders lowered slightly, as if the weight of his own disappointment had settled on him. He knew she was right. He knew her decision was justified. He thanked her for speaking honestly and said he truly hoped the hotel could learn from what happened. When he left, she finished packing her belongings and grabbed her small notebook, the same one she carried when everything began. She looked at it for a moment, thinking about how such a small object had witnessed so much in one day. Then she placed it in her bag and headed to the elevator. As she walked into the lobby, many guests recognized her and gave her kind smiles or small nods of support. She smiled back warmly. She did not want the moment to feel heavy. She did not want anyone to feel bitterness or anger. She wanted everyone to simply move forward. Outside, a line of shuttles from the partner hotel waited to take attendees to the new venue. The atmosphere around them was lively, almost like a fresh start. People chatted, shared their thoughts, and helped one another with luggage. The energy was positive, supportive, and full of unity. She stepped into one of the shuttles, choosing a seat near the window. As the door closed and the shuttle began moving, she glanced back at the hotel one last time. The lobby, which was usually busy and bright during such events, now looked strangely quiet and empty. The staff stood near the entrance with uncertain expressions. Watching the guests leave, she did not feel triumph or satisfaction. She felt peace, peaceful knowing that she had done what was fair and dignified. She had not argued, shouted, or demanded anything. She had simply let actions speak. When the shuttle arrived at the new hotel, the difference was noticeable right away. The staff greeted everyone with warm smiles, guiding them with gentle and respectful energy. The welcome felt genuine. The guests felt at ease. It felt like the conference had finally found the right place. Over the next few hours, the conference organizers worked hard to set up everything again. She joined them, offering help where she could. People admired her humility, even though she was the keynote speaker and one of the main sponsors. She was there helping arrange chairs, checking sound systems, and talking with attendees. Later in the evening, she walked onto the stage again for another session. The room was full and the air was peaceful. She began speaking, not about what happened at the other hotel, but about strength, dignity, and how small moments reveal who people truly are. Her message was gentle and full of hope. Everyone listened closely. Many understood the deeper meaning behind her words, even though she never mentioned the incident directly. They admired her for handling everything with grace, not anger. When the session ended, people came up to her for conversations, photos, and handshakes. She welcomed everyone with a warm smile. She felt grateful not for what happened earlier, but for the way people chose to stand with her. Later that night, when she finally returned to her new hotel room, she sat by the window again, looking at the city lights. She thought about the day from beginning to end. It was long, challenging, and emotional, but it taught her something important. Dignity does not need noise. Respect does not need force. Strength does not need loudest. Sometimes the quietest decisions create the loudest impact. She closed her eyes with a calm heart, knowing she had done the right thing, not just for herself, but for every person who expected fairness and respect when they walked into a place meant to welcome them. The next morning, the conference continued smoothly. People were happy, relaxed, and full of new energy. The incident at the other hotel slowly faded away, becoming just another reminder of how easily assumptions can lead to disrespect. As she stepped on stage for one final speech before the event ended, she looked at the audience with warmth. She thanked them for their support and for choosing unity over negativity. And as the room filled with applause, she realized something. She had not only shut down the hotel for the event, she had opened a door to awareness, understanding, and respect. And that was far more powerful than anything else she could have done.